Well, here we are at letter grades. So how do I automatically assign a letter grade to a student's score? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the person's final score, so their total, and I'm going to compare it in a table that I've created, and according to where I find it, I'm going to return a letter. Okay. Now what I've created here is what I like to call a lookup table, where I'm going to actually look up the grade. And one important thing to remember, very important, is your lookup table must be in ascending order. Okay, so starting at 0, from 0 to 50, that corresponds to an F. Okay, so this is the lower bound and the upper bound. So the upper bound starts right at the line here, if you imagine that. So from 0, and that line is where 50 starts, and that corresponds to an F. Okay, and from 50 to the upper bound, 55, corresponds to a D. Okay? It's actually just before 55, so when you actually get to the number 55, that goes to a C minus, sorry. Okay? And all the way to an A, where 90 and above correspond to an A, right? From 85 until 90, or just before 90, A minus. Okay. So let's go right into the formula. Now this is a lookup function in this category here, and there are various lookup functions, but for our purposes, the easiest one is just lookup. And I like the first option. I find it a little bit easier to understand. So it gives me this box here, and it says, what's the lookup value? What is it that I'm actually trying to look up? Yeah, I'm trying to look up this score right there. Okay, 95. Lookup vector. This is where I'm trying to look it up. Okay? I'm trying to look it up here in this, what they call a vector. Okay, so those scores here. I'm trying to find number 95 somewhere in that, or in this case beyond the last one. Okay? And when I find it, what do I return? What's the result? Okay? I return one of these. Okay? And there you can see that it gives me an A. Now, what would happen if I autocomplete this is a strange thing happens. Is I get things that don't really correspond, and especially here I got some sort of error. Now if you followed my lesson about locking cells, you'll kind of understand what's going on here. If not, refer to that video about locking cells to kind of get a better idea of what I'm talking about here. So let me just compare the formula here of this first one here. So it's using this cell here, 95, and it's looking up in the vector here. And if you recall, when you autocomplete, what Excel does is it keeps bumping down these things. So at first it's looking up 95, then it looks up 95.3, then it looks up this one and this one. And the same thing that's going to happen to this reference here is every time this is going to keep bumping down until I get to like the very end here, and watch what happened. So it's looking up this value here, but all of this got bumped down as well. And all this stuff here is empty. That's why I'm getting undesired results. Okay, so as I said before, if you remember, I need to lock things into place. I need to lock up this table. So S2 until S11. Okay, so S2, lock it with the F4 key. Okay. F4 key, and I also have to lock these ones here, R2 until R11. Okay, and again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, refer to that video where I do talk about locking cells. So lock R2, lock R4, and then enter, and now I should get the correct results. Okay. There we have it. So getting your letter grades from your total scores.